My neighbor recently lost her dog, and for weeks I would see her and she'd cry and cry. She never stopped crying. Then one day she said to me, I didn't grieve for my teenage brother who died on a motorcycle accident. I didn't grieve for my parents, but now all of this grief is coming up, and it's necessary to take care of yourself and to take care of things as they happen.
Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our partners for their support in getting these stories told. SMUD, Sacramento Metropolitan Utility District's Shine Awards program benefiting nonprofits for energy efficiency. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, and Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. Modern life's tasks and projects often prove taxing in so many ways, but possibly none as challenging as the time it takes away from us to grieve when necessary. Grief is universal. We all experience it at some point in time, likely multiple times in a lifetime. The loss can be significant, but society expects us to move on quickly. Get over it, if you will. Grief can be disenfranchised. It doesn't have to be death or loss of a loved one. It could be divorce, bankruptcy, loss of a job. And there's a stigma in many communities over anxiety or depression from loss. Today, we can be more isolated. Grief impacts our health if unaddressed. In this episode, you'll learn of a network of support for grief, the Bereavement Network. And they've been around helping others deal with grief for over 40 years. Our guests today have not only experienced grief that motivated them to help others as volunteers for the organization, but they'll share much more about the benefits of the network and its practical application in a world moving ever so rapidly. Elizabeth Cantu and Suzanne Austen, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you.
It's so good to be here.
Wonderful to have you. Our topic today is a little different. It's one that we haven't really addressed, but it's really prevalent in life, period. It's a topic of loss and grief, and it's difficult to address, yet it's so necessary to be addressed. I was really surprised to hear how long this organization has been around, but obviously grief has been around forever, so necessary is really an understatement. If you would give us a little history of the Bereavement Network, I think that would help everybody understand a little bit more. Suzanne?
I'd be happy to. Yes, the Bereavement Network Resources of Sacramento was established 41 years ago. That's, half my life almost. And the people that started it were grieving parents, and they were looking for some support. And in their resources, they didn't find a whole lot in Sacramento. But at about that time, 41 years ago was 1984. It was before we had computers where we could just look things up easily. And so they went and found the founders, the two women, found a group, their friends probably, of doctors. We have psychologists, caregivers, and bereaved people themselves were on the founding board. So when they saw that they didn't have much resource here, they decided to do it themselves, and they became incorporated as a nonprofit in 1984. It was about that time that the peers support groups started to appear. So now there's a group for mothers who have lost their children or spouses have lost, and So they came up with they gleaned all those things that were happening at that time and put them in a directory. And it was very rudimentary. The directory was not organized, but the numbers and the dates were there, the people were there. And we've come a long way from that. But basically, that's how we started.
It's so common. That's how some of these organizations just bubble up as a need presents itself. And to think 41 years ago, I moved here in 85, so just a year after you started, and knowing what our digital capacity was back then. I mean, we had cell phones, but we really didn't have the access to resources that we have today to where you can just go and find it.
Yep.
And you still produce a non-digital piece, a pamphlet of sorts, as well as now a robust website with information and resources as well. Let's continue on the grief path, because grief isn't just death. Grief can be a variety of different losses. It could be the loss of a job, the loss of a marriage. A family member just moves away to a child. That could be catastrophic if it was a close aunt or uncle or grandparent. Does everything get addressed? How does it get addressed?
Well, we make an effort to address many things, but I want to tell you why I got on the board initially, and that's because I had been in an abusive relationship, and after 12 years of marriage, I left the relationship. But when I left my daughter, my church, my friends, my community. I left. And it was a very difficult time. Even though I wanted to leave, the loss was tremendous. I had to rebuild myself, and I was looking for support. And I just slugged myself away through it.
The hard way.
Yeah. So, but the other interesting thing is my neighbor recently lost her dog. And for weeks, I would see her and she'd cry and cry. She never stopped crying. And then one day she said to me, I didn't grieve for my teenage brother who died on a motorcycle accident. I didn't grieve for my parents. But now all of this grief is coming up. And it's necessary to take care of yourself and to take care of things as they happen.
And we know that's so much more today than we did back then. The
sure.
mental health, mental wellness. And it sounds like that pent-up grief was just balled up inside of her, and the animal, the pet, which is serious for many, many people. It's as close as a human to them. Just released all of it.
Yes. So, as time goes on, as our culture becomes more open about what's out there, we now have a listing for opioid epidemic, and we have a listing for LGBTQ, and we saw that, we've got to keep up with the times. We've got to make this directory bigger and bigger.
Which requires more and more work, and we'll
Yes.
get into that in just a second. Elizabeth, is there a particular geography that the organization serves?
Yes, there is a particular geography. We serve the greater Sacramento area, but we also serve the outlining areas: Davis, Yolo County, Amador County, Placer County, El Dorado County, and El Dorado Hills. However, I have this great story that has personally touched me with the Bereavement Network resource that was beyond our geography, and I wanted to share that story with
Please.
you. I have 2 adult children, and my daughter lives in Oregon at the time, and she had just started a new job, and she called me one night as I was at my desk frantically crying that her fiance had passed away in his sleep, and she had just got word. And the call a mother never wants to hear, and I didn't know how I was going to help her. And ironically, this directory was sitting on my desk, and I told her, I will do my best to see what I can do to help you. And so just stay put. As I opened the directory, there was the law enforcement chaplain in our directory. I called them immediately, and they were able to dispatch a fellow colleague in Oregon to my daughter's hotel room within 1 hour. And it still just gives me chills because that collaboration of networking across, different states was just so profound to me because this was my precious daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And the chaplain stayed with my daughter until my son was able to get there. And I'll never forget how valuable the organization became to me because it became very personal. And because of that, I'm definitely, serving right now as vice president, but I'll definitely keep serving because that need was met immediately with the resource that we've been working so hard for the last 41 years to create.
And I'm so sorry to hear that loss of a fiancé. They never even got to the marriage part. I can only imagine the whole family experiencing something like that.
Yes.
But the value of almost immediate support. And many of us don't recognize that because we deal with it. We either shove it into a compartment in our brain somewhere where we're not going to deal with it, or we deny it. I'm fine. When in fact, maybe not so fine. And it's easy to just move on. But we recognize today the significance of dealing with grief and dealing with issues that have such emotional or mental or even physical trauma that we don't even realize. And Suzanne, to your story, we've had, Weave in here and other domestic violence organizations, human trafficking, all of those have this experiential grief, both to the families and to the victim. But I don't know how it gets dealt with. I'm sure there's counseling in many cases, but maybe not so much. And there's an awareness now that there's an organization that somebody can connect with. Let's talk about collaboration, because you said the word with the collaboration between the chaplain here and in Oregon. Who are the people that you collaborate with?
Well, we work with a village of organizations, from our grief share hospices, churches, volunteers. We have professionals. We have people that were recently widowed. It's a gamut of all different walks of life, which makes such a beautiful way to serve because we all have the one mind to help the bereaved. Mm-hmm. And so that's a beautiful thing. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is that our funeral homes, we have a major sponsor, East Lawn Cemetery, who helps us print our directories. And each year they print over 10,000 directories for us free of charge for us to be able to offer those to the churches and all the different entities that need this type of a resource. We also have Dignity Memorial. They are also a wonderful resource. They have helped us lately. So excited. One of our newest board members is a part of the Dignity Memorial. And I love having the new generation come on board and help us to get the word out and collaborate. It's pretty cool. I'm very proud to be a part of this organization.
Well, what's really neat about that, I happened to meet that person, and that's
Yes.
what started this conversation, because
Absolutely.
this is somebody maybe 30 years old-ish, and I thought, you're in an industry, in this case, dealing with death. This is people who have passed. I thought it was just so odd, but she was so enthusiastic and really understood, Kayla, thank you, the nature of this beast, so to speak, and her engagement in a completely different space that you wouldn't expect for somebody of that age. The thing that we keep referring to is it's a pamphlet. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say an old school pamphlet. Most of us understand what that looks like. You go to church and you used to get a bulletin, and it's similar to that. But I can see the value, because even in our most technically digital world, if we're not looking for it, that doesn't just show up. But if you should happen to go to a memorial service or you go to a church, you see this sitting on the side, you might grab it. You might say, that appeared there for me for some reason. I'm dealing with something. You can distribute it. You can hand it out to places where there's challenges. On some of those nonprofit organizations that deal with people who are experiencing grief, the last thing they want to do is be digging around. They're not thinking about it. They're not going.
Or can they at that point? Yes.
Yes, exactly right.
Helpful.
So they get this little pamphlet, and it's like, okay, that's 2 blocks from where I live. Or there's a name or a number or an organization that I can reach out to. How do you find the organizations to contribute? And by that, I mean the services, not to pay for it, but to participate in supporting those who are grieving.
A wonderful thing that was Suzanne's brainchild is that, Suzanne and I worked very closely as Madam VP and President during the pandemic. And she had spoke about, one day I want to have a network. I want to have a network where quarterly we meet with all the professionals and we're face to face. And I said, we're going to make that happen someday. And I'm so proud to say that it's our 1-year anniversary where we have been having networking meetings with the professionals every quarter. And so with that being said, we now have these professionals that love to be able to talk with other professionals in law enforcement and the hospitals working with bereaved children to our mortuaries, et cetera, et cetera. And there's such a synergy there that it's so amazing to be able to have this quarterly event now. And so I am grateful for that because we're thinking of things that we never even thought of. Like one of the examples at our last board meeting, we had someone that was a person that was talking about the planning for, what is it called, a trust, having a trust. And we thought, yes, we need that resource because it just keeps escalating to a new idea that can be just amazing.
Yes.
And now we're 41 years and we're still growing and evolving, which is so exciting.
Well, the one thing we know for sure is grief is not going anywhere. It's unfortunately going to be here in some way, shape, or form forever. And Suzanne, you were saying something as Elizabeth was talking about the organizations, about the schools.
Yes, I have thought for a long time that we need to get these directories in the schools because we have a phone service, Bereavement Network Resource. We have a call that's a message phone. You leave a message, we call you back. And how many times have I gotten calls from somebody in the school, a teacher or principal people, and they want resources, they want directories. Recently, a child had brought a gun to school. This is elementary school, and the kids were freaked out. It turned out he didn't have a gun, but nevertheless, the kids were traumatized. There's so much in the news nowadays about this kind of thing.
Right.
So it was actually, she wanted somebody to come and talk to them. And so I went to our directory and called the law enforcement chaplaincy again. And they went out to the school and talked to the kids. So, yeah.
Great example. Great example of just the outreach and having the awareness that an organization like this exists. And I know we've had several other organizations that could use your service who have sat in the studio, and I just keep mentioning it. And they're like, we didn't know. We didn't know there was such an opportunity.
If you give us those contacts, we'll contact them.
Yes. And I think I already have.
Yes.
In some cases, they've moved through it. You're an all-volunteer organization, correct?
Yes.
Which makes it really difficult because nobody's getting paid to do any of the back-end support. Yet you have a pamphlet. That pamphlet requires, the digitization. It has to get printed. It has to go somewhere. It has to be dealt with. It has to be delivered in some way, shape, or form. How are you funded? How does everything work? What kind of budget do you deal with?
We are a nonprofit funded by our sponsors. And as I said earlier, East Lawn is one of our oldest sponsors that's been around. But we also have something recent that we just added to our repertoire, which is the Big Day of Giving. And we were so excited about that Big Day of Giving. But just to give you a reference, at one point when I came on board, this directory was 25 cents. It was 25 cents 9+ years ago. And we really got creative and thought, well, we need to do some type of bundles. We need a website. Suzanne and I recruited some graduates at Sac State. They helped us get online. So we have been moving and shaking for quite some time. But in regards to funding, a lot of our board members actually donate to our budget. But we also have different sponsors that will give us a donation for a bundle of these directories or a presence on our website. Something new that we're doing. Suzanne has been working really hard with that. And Suzanne, do you want to tell them about the presence on a website for the fundraising?
Yes, the website is amazing. So I didn't have anything to do with it, but we have a tab for affiliates. So you can be a part of the Bereavement Network resources and support us at the same time by advertising what you do. So, and it's so nominal, I don't know why everyone doesn't do it. But it's only $200 to the end of this year. We're going to raise it minimally as we go along probably, but it's just a way to get your word out. I always tell people I talk to tell us something that you do that nobody else does, and post it. And so we have gotten a few affiliates that way. And
that's great. So that website's actually working for you. You know, what does it cost? How many of these things do you do a year? 10,000, did you say?
Yeah, 10,000.
And what does that cost, roughly?
We don't know. East Lawn takes care of it.
Oh,
Bless
wonderful.
their
I know,
hearts.
right? Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, great. So you don't even have to see it on your P&L and report it. Fantastic.
And they have a big spot on the back of the directory.
As they should.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think everybody in Sacramento knows East Lawn.
Absolutely.
It's historic in so
I
many
want
ways.
to say another little plug for East Lawn, and that is they used to be strictly cemetery, but they are really into the mortuary
service,
and cemetery now. And I just want to clarify that.
As you look at the support that you give in the community each year, how many people do you think you touch? Do you have any idea that come through the network in some way, shape, or form?
You know, we've touched on a lot of avenues that we stretch out into and people we touch. It's really hard to get a solid number on that. We publish 10,000 directories a year. We get those out. Hospices are certainly a big taker of those, and it makes sense that they would give these directories to people who haven't died yet, to families, but start to think about this. And we talked about the website. The website has a great presence for the directories on the website. So you're right, you don't have to have a paper copy. But if you want to take it home, it's kind of nice to have it in a little package rather than print it out from the internet.
Well, especially when you're running around with a situation, whatever that situation may be, this can travel easily with you. You know, you may not be able to get to your phone. You may not have an internet connection. You may be trying to do something as a resource while you're waiting for something. Right. So we all thought paper was going to go away at some point in time, and I think we use as much of it today as we always have, just differently.
Yes. And so early on, I've been with the organization for 20 years, but not consistently. I took a hiatus for about 9 years. And at the time I started in late 90s, we had a telephone service. We still have that service today. And it's one more way of getting the word out and helping people through their situation. Maybe they just want a referral to opioid. My daughter just died, and I can give them that, but I also offer to send them the directory if they like to have it. Or go on, they can get it online certainly too.
Let's take a break from the conversation with Elizabeth and Suzanne of the Bereavement Network to learn a little bit about the people who help make this program possible.
Make our communities bright with Smudge Shine Awards. Now through July 31st, your nonprofit can apply for a chance to receive funding for projects that improve and revitalize communities in our service area. We're seeking proposals that support zero-carbon workforce development, environmental justice and equity, inclusive economic growth, and STEM education. Smudge Shine Awards are competitive and funds are limited. Submit your proposal by July 31st. Learn more at smud.org/shine.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
If we step back for a minute and look at a really big picture, we know that grief is real and most of us are going to experience it at some point in time in our lives, and in many cases, multiple times. What would the organization look like if you didn't have to worry about a budget, if you could really do something grand? What would it look like?
Wow, I love that question so much because with the 9.5 years that I've been serving, at the time I was the youngest in the board, and now here I am, and we have all these other board members that are, from a different generation, and they have amazing ideas. But what I would say, if I could capture what that would look like, I dream of a brick and mortar that we would have a building centrally located where people could walk in, something like maybe a Sierra 2 or something that's been established for a long time. A bereaved person could walk in, come into our office, and we would be able to not only help them with finding the resources they need, we would also fund folks that may need help with burial costs, or maybe just trying to find relief through acupuncture, have maybe Qigong. I'm a creative, so the creative modality has been my method I've used for my healing process of 34 years of experiencing grief in my family. So I really believe that it's very important to offer creative outlets like gardening classes, community, etc. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is to offer an endowment that would be able to bring others in the future help and resources. You know how much it costs to bury or cremate someone now? It's just unbelievable. And so that's a crisis.
We all used to think that the cremation was going to be the inexpensive way, but they found a way now to charge enough for cremation in so many different elements that they bring into the equation that didn't used to exist.
Truly.
So, yes, I do understand.
So we need someone in a scholarship. The last part of this dream that I'm envisioning, which thank you so much for this question, is just the ability to have scholarships for those that are studying thantology and in the funeral industry. I know that ARC has a program there that they actually offer indigenous service where it's funded by the Sacramento County, and it's through the coroner's office, and it's in our directory where if there is someone that has a challenge with burying their loved one, they can use this service. So that is in our directory, and you can go to our website and get more information on that. But there's a lot of resources, but the dream is big, but it's that we want to be able to help another human face-to-face and have that drive. Kayla, as you mentioned earlier, is thinking of creating a good grief ball next year for those that are in the front line of bereavement and grief. Mm-hmm. And we're so excited about that. But, the budget's $45,000, so we need to be able to incorporate that in some way. So those are the dreams that we have, Jeff, and I'm looking forward to being around long enough to see it come to fruition.
Oh, I love those. And I really like the idea, again, because we know this is a human condition. It's not going away. If you had an endowment of some sort, that's sustainability for the organization. It keeps it going in perpetuity for the life of the endowment. And if it does well, that's long past our lifetimes, which is really important.
I'd like to add that an endowment would be great for the new area of profession, the death doula. That would be so great if we could if we had a big caseload of death doulas that could minister to go with the family through the death process before they've died, but, anticipatory death, that kind. And I personally went through that training myself during COVID, and I didn't want to make a profession of it. I just wanted to be able to be there for people. So,
and is this the death doula? Is that different than a hospice nurse per se?
It's in addition. It doesn't take anything away from hospice. It just helps the family understand what's going to happen and to be there when they have grief, and I mean, they're grieving,
Mm-hmm.
and to just be there with them for maybe a month, maybe 3 months, who knows,
Right.
But yeah, it's just to hold their hand.
I think that's wonderful to hear that position is now a taught position. So it's, we have our community, we have our friends, we have our family. That's who gathers, but they're not trained.
Yeah.
And it works, and it has worked, but so much better that it's somebody who is trained to really identify and be able to see certain things so that that person doesn't fall into either a deeper depression or, substance abuse, whatever the situation may be that is their outlet, and denial being one of those as well. That seems to be like almost the acceptable one because nobody sees anything, so everything's fine.
Can I give you an example of that?
Sure.
My father-in-law was on hospice. He had several things wrong, but he was failing. His wife, my mother-in-law, called the kids and said, you need to come now if you want to see your dad. So all of us go out there, 2 from Arizona. They live in Arizona, and us from Sacramento. And we get there, and he's supposed to have morphine around the clock. And they've got it. It's there for the kids to give it to him. They live out in the country, too. And the adult children are all standing around in the kitchen, and they're debating, gee, do we want to give it to him? And, well, I don't want to be responsible for killing him. And I just had to say, look, you guys, the man is going to die. He's in a lot of pain. He's not going to start walking again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to make him comfortable? Then we need to follow the protocol. And he did last about a week later, but we took shifts. My husband and I took shifts through the night to make sure every 4 hours he got that medication.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's that training, and the awareness.
It was before that.
Oh. Well, then it was just common sense.
Yeah.
Good for you. Back to today. What is the greatest need of the organization?
I believe awareness is so important. Who we are, where we're at. I did some outreach for the federal government, and so I have that background, and I really want to partner with the different entities of the government, county, city, state, and be able to take this to a whole nother level of outreach. And I believe we're doing that by starting here at this podcast and the things of recruiting new members and the networking. But our greatest need is for others to be involved and to volunteer and to donate.
And I think people need to see the effect, the impact that you're having. You've been around for 41 years, so clearly there's a value in the service. And
Absolutely.
As they know that, the more likely they are to recognize not only is there a need, but there's something being fulfilled. You don't last that long if there isn't a positive impact in the community. And that's
For sure.
It's a big plus for what's happening. What's the best way for somebody to find out more about you?
Listen to this podcast repeatedly.
Yes, I agree with that. Thank you.
And then also they can go to our website, which is griefhelpsacramento.com.
So it's griefhelpsacramento.com.
Yes. And you can also call our number at 916-557-5882. If you need us to call you back, we can also mail you a directory. We could chat with you. And then, of course, you can email us as well, which is griefhelpsacramento@gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll put all of those in the show notes as well for people to look on their phone and or their computer, depending how they
Sure. And we're on
receive the
Instagram as
podcast.
well and Facebook. So those are other, social media ways to reach out to us.
Good. So you're out in all the contemporary venues because I can see you've got this disparate audience from seniors who obviously experience grief and spouses and people who are aging out at this point in time, as well as those who experience grief from a variety of different ways at younger ages. And they're going to be much more digitally connected and looking for resources digitally. So you have to play in a contemporary world as well as a very traditional staid world as well.
Right.
Back to the people, as you were mentioning, even with East Lawn, there's still a lot of burial going on where people bought those plots 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And today, most of us don't even think about being put into, a casket in the ground. It's distribute my ashes someplace that I really enjoyed, or keep some for family remembrance. But it's anything but, a big box in the ground. So the changing norms are just really wide spectrums.
And the environmental consciousness of the world and the young people are much more not wanting to put concrete in the ground and, big caskets.
Right.
We're coming along, I think, to treat the world better.
Yes. Well, in so many ways, chemically as well, because it all happens with embalming and,
yes.
The list goes on and on and on. Well, loss is difficult for any of us, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a loved one, as we've learned. But providing a resource that helps the general population know there's a place they can get the support is a message that needs to be shared with everyone in so many different ways. And you guys, as an all-volunteer group, what a commitment to all of you, your board, your volunteers, everybody that contributes. Thank you for what you're doing in such a scrappy way. I mean, you're scratching and clawing and making sure that the information's getting out. And I really want to see that facility, centrally located
Yes.
and see an endowed piece that allows an organization like this to exist, in some semblance of perpetuity, and also connecting you to the other organizations that we speak with that could use the balance of what grief relief could provide for so many of the people that are the impacted people of those organizations, whether it be a Weave or a domestic violence foster youth, that movement. It's in so many places in so many different ways that I just applaud you for what you're doing, and you're doing it such a hard way that hopefully we'll get to see it become a little bit easier to where there's just greater engagement, acceptance, and use that provides you what you need.
I love it. Sounds great. And it's definitely takes a village. So thank you.
Yeah, and Jeff, you have done a lot for us. Just to recognize us and have us here is I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. Once again, we're grateful for the businesses who have made this program possible. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. You can find them in Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom. CapTrust.com. SMUD Shine Awards, helping support our nonprofit community with grants for more efficient energy usage. smud.org/shine. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. westernhealth.com.